know, Dave, depending on what time of the year, certainly permit go off the deep end. And over here at the Hummingbird off the deep end Jägermeister workbench, we're
That's a
talking
mouthful.
tonight about permit, which
Well-
I love, as you know.
Well, I know you do, and I tell you what, I don't do a whole lot of permit fishing. The only permits I've ever seen in the wild was in Antigua. I was there doing a wahoo show, and we shot the whole show in a day, and we got to, hey, let's go try to catch some permit on the flats. And the guy says, I said, there's no permit around here. And he showed me a picture, and it must have been, 50-pound permit. I mean, it was the biggest permit I've ever seen. So we went out there and chased them around all day, and I didn't do any good at it. But you're right, there's two different ways to catch them. You can catch them up on the flats when they're real skittish and hard to catch, or you can catch them over the wrecks when they get in those big aggregations and start to get out on the Gulf wrecks. So I'd like to know, what time of year is right for which one. When would you go to do that offshore
Well, in the
stuff?
spring, they primarily, Dave, they come in, in March and April as it starts to warm up. They move into the inshore wrecks and up on the reefs. And that's where they start to stage in big groups to, primarily get into the spawning deal. Now, the same thing happens to them in the Gulf, but usually what happens in the Gulf is a little later. It's more in the month of August, more in the month of September, and that's after what I see them doing, in the wrecks down in the lower Keys. I know certainly on the reefs in Biscayne Bay, it's an April-May thing. They start showing up on the flats during that time. My favorite time of year to fish for them on the flats is August, the heat of the summer.
Now,
But
when you're out there, are you looking? I mean, do you get on the flat and start looking for them, or do you start in the channels? Because every time I've ever fished for them in the Keys, I've had guys that take me to channel markers and said, "Where do you see them on this channel marker?"
Well, but that, to me, that's not permit fishing in 101 permit fishing. That's not to say there's anything wrong with that. Certainly a lot of permit have been caught that way. But primarily you find them in 3 to 4 feet of water, somewhere near an edge of a channel, because they use the channel to retreat to, and then they'll pop up on the edge of a sand hole. A lot of times we'll pull down the edge, and especially on that higher stages of the tide, the last of the income and the first of the fall, and that's my favorite time to fish for them.
So on the fallen tide.
Only on the higher stage. Once it gets too low, then it's harder to find them. At least for me, where I fish for them in Biscayne Bay and the lower Keys.
What are you using for bait?
Well,
mostly?
we'll use a live blue crab, and we'll use this gulp as an example of what we would do. We typically would use a J hook, something like a 3-0 or 4-0 J hook, and typically we will hook this in the corner of the crab just like that.
Yeah.
You go through, you'll use a split shot if the current's real heavy. And you'd put the split shot, mash it all the way down to where you've tied this onto the line. And the reason why that is the presentation that you want to give. You want to hit the permit in the face with the crab and let it sink. Don't move it, because that crab's going to retreat to the bottom, and that permit's not going to allow it to get in the grass. He's
So you
gonna
want
eat
to
it
throw it right at the face of the fish. You don't want to throw
Pretend
it
he's
like
a Jack Crevalle.
You don't want to
Hit
be
him right
you don't want
across
to be
his
a
eyes.
foot in front of it,
Nope.
or you want to throw it right, because most time, like when you're throwing a cobia or something, you want to be a little out in front of it.
You want a reaction bite.
And it's the same with a fly.
With a fly, the same thing. Hit him in the face with the fly. Here you got a great imitation of a crab fly. We're going to throw this, hit him right in the face. But the difference is, don't strip it. You want to throw it, and that's where the mistake is. Let the crab fall.
A crab doesn't swim this way when something's after it. He goes straight to the bottom.
That's
right?
correct.
And that's why you want to do that.
That's
Is there
correct.
any special color that you like to use for crabs?
No, I mean, the Merkin fly is the one that Steve Huff developed with Del Brown. It's brown, it's made out of carpet, but the flies have really become a cool thing. I'll tell you a little twist, the difference with the flies I use for permit. See how that guy tied the lead here? I put my lead back here. And the reason why is because when this thing sinks down current, it's going to sink this way on a Murphy fly versus this wants to sink like that. And a crab never sinks flat when he's running. He always sinks this way.
Yeah.
So we put the eyes on the back.
Ah, sweet. Well, there you go.
All right, man, we got to go.
And that's permit fishing.
That is permit fishing.